So folks, we might as well get started, yeah? Can everybody hear us okay? Everybody understand me okay? Thumbs down. Right, fair enough. Look, Greg Wallace, Mickey Campbell, we're delighted to be here. Hope everybody's prep is going really well. We thought we'd help you out with some preparation and run this webinar tonight. So what we want to do is not take you through the absolute minutiae around the race rules, but take you through some of the detail, the main detail, and actually offer you an opportunity to get your feedback as well. What I want to do as well is just give you like 3 pieces of background. So the race rules, they're largely based around previous race rules. And then what we've done is we've had consultations with the various approving authorities, and they've placed some conditions on us. So we've had to incorporate those kind of rules into what you see today or what you see tonight. So that's the first piece of background. Second piece of background, let me just actually share a bit of a presentation and we can take it from there. So the second one is, we've been largely guided by ensuring the safety of runners. This is absolute paramount as far as we're concerned. Secondly, we're asking runners and their support crews just to be smart. So we've tried not to be too prescriptive around these race rules. And we've only kind of been that way when actual authorities have forced us down that road. But what we're doing is we're asking everyone to just apply common sense and be smart with their decision making. So that's number 2 kind of bits of background. Last bit of background, please don't flout the rules. Greg and myself, we can't speak strongly enough about this. Just please don't flout the rules. Support teams in the past have been probably the most guilty of doing this, trying to give the runner an edge. All we'd ask for is everyone to continue to show the high levels of sportsmanship that the event has joined in previous years. Have a great respect for your fellow runners and your fellow support crews. And let's try and guarantee and ensure the integrity of the event going forward so that future generations can actually, test themselves to the limit as well. So look, both Greg and myself, really strong in this. Can't speak strongly enough about it. Even if you're tempted to flout the rules, can I suggest that Coast To Kosci is not the race for you? And you might want to kind of withdraw straight away. So that's how strongly we feel about it. And I can't emphasize that enough. There's a few people actually just waiting to get into the actual webinar, so let me just let those guys in. And I'll pass over to Greg.
Cool. Right. Thank you. Look, just go through a very much a high-level race schedule. For those of you who have either participated in the race as a runner or as a crew member, these are pretty much standard times, as you'll see. On the Thursday evening, there'll be a pre-race briefing and welcome dinner at the Eden Fisherman's Club. Our intent is by this webinar, putting out some more information progressively, that actually we're able to keep that fairly tight. So it's not an exorbitantly long race briefing, but more about the real last minute key things you need to know. Friday morning at 5 o'clock, race registration. It's a very simple process. We see that your name is on a list, and it's more about making sure that everybody is there rather than necessarily anything else. For those in Eden, leave yourselves that few extra minutes to get out there. We will only be on the beach there for probably about half an hour all up. With that, before we head off with our 5:30 a.m. sharp start. And again, when parking out at Boydtown Beach, leave plenty of room.
So we mentioned toilets.
Yeah. Look, there'll be no toilets out there. In some years, there's been a portaloo out there. One of the challenges is it's probably in use for half an hour, and it needs to stay out there for a week, which creates other issues and challenges with it out there as well. We just encourage you to go before you leave wherever you're staying. And from then on, you're in the normal race guide. So there'll be no toilets out there, and we ask you to refrain from the bushes if you can. So we start off at registration at 5 o'clock, which is effectively just making sure that everybody is there. 5:30 sharp, race start, and we will see the runners head off. Just one element about the race start is that we'll be making sure support crews wait until all runners are safely across the Princess Highway and into the Brandy River fire trail before vehicles are allowed to leave the car park area. Saturday, 5th December, the usual cut-off, 25 hours at Dalgety, which is the 148k mark. 2:30 p.m, the cut-off at Thredbo River, just north at 189k, which is a couple of k just up from Jindabyne, on the way up to Perisher. The next cut-off is at the 42.5 hour mark at Charlotte Pass, which is 222 k's, and that's at midnight. If you're not there by midnight, it's extremely unlikely that you'll be able to get up the mountain and back before the 3:30 finish at Charlotte's Pass. The following morning at 7 o'clock, bright and early, post-race breakfast will start, and no doubt we'll see the stiff leg of walk start from that time, before we have race presentation at 9 o'clock, where we celebrate every finisher, everybody who competes, but in particularly everybody who finishes Coast To Kosci 2020. And both those will be at the Lake Jindabyne Hotel Motel. Thank you.
So getting into what this actually means for runners to start off with. So everybody knows that you must have a dedicated support crew and a dedicated support vehicle. Now, there's a couple of changes here to previous events. In the daylight, we're asking people to run on the right-hand side of the road at all times. There's two exceptions to that: when you're running up Big Jack and when you're running up Beloka. And then during the night hours, you run on the left-hand side of the road, and your vehicle supports you in close proximity. That doesn't mean it's up your arse, within like 10 meters. Just use common sense and be smart around it, and keep it back maybe like 100 meters, 150. It just means that any kind of vehicle that's coming up on your support vehicle knows through your hazard lights, knows that there's something happening up ahead, so they're going to slow down, and they're just actually going to be a little bit more careful about overtaking you. COVID is dictating this to a little bit of an extent, but what we want to try and do is avoid people running in groups. I know that's going to be hard, and I know that's kind of like probably the norm in past races, but we want to try and avoid that. We're not going to criticise or come down heavy on people, but we, wherever possible, just keep it 5, 10 minutes, 15 minutes most, running in your group, and then kind of move on. Race numbers need to be worn at all time and visible at all times. Here's another one that kind of changes from the past. A rear flashing light, it needs to be worn at all times. And if you've got a band, one of those kind of race number bands, all you really need to do is affix that to the back of your band and get that going. You obviously need to be stocked up with batteries just to make sure, or have 2 or 3 of them so that they're ready to go. But those need to be worn at all times. The usual stuff of a high-vis reflective vest, that needs to be worn at night. And then additionally, from Jindabyne onwards, just due to the amount of traffic on the Kosciuszko Road. Headlamp needs to be worn at night. And then from Charlotte Pass up to the top of Kosciuszko and back down to Charlotte Pass, there's mandatory gear that you need to carry. Your support crew can carry that for you. But that's going to be checked by a race official at Charlotte Pass. And all support crew that go up with the runner, they need to have that mandatory gear as well. Just another couple of things to close off the runner section. It's permissible to rest or shelter in stationary support vehicles, but that support vehicle is not allowed to actually travel forward along the route. It's permissible to deviate from the race route, but what you must do is resume at the same point of departure. So you're not allowed to move forward, you shouldn't move back. You should actually resume your running from the point where you actually left the race route. And you're not allowed to join the race if you've retired or you're withdrawn. I'm happy for people to just come off mute now. And if you get any kind of questions or comments or feedback around those, then Greg and myself are happy and hopefully able to field them.
Question about the vehicle behind at night. Just on the face of it, seems a little bit dangerous, because I mean the runner's traveling at, you know, I don't know, 7 or 8 k's an hour, so the vehicle's pretty much, you know, crawling along the road. I'd be a bit nervous driving on some roads if someone came up quickly behind you. I don't know. I mean, this is my reflexive feeling about it. So, but you're required to have it behind you, right?
Yeah. As we said, it's close proximity is the phrase now. That doesn't mean exactly right behind you. That can be some distance behind. But again, common sense applies. And really, when that was in the original discussions and consultation, the vehicle is reasonably close. The vehicle coming up from behind, the support vehicle can see a vehicle ahead, and to a degree that vehicle, the support vehicle actually shields the runner a little bit as the other vehicle goes round. We appreciate it's a little bit different, and we also appreciate that, yes, that means that the support vehicle will be crawling along at times, or park slowly at times, but we'll leave that to your I suppose, judgment about either how fast you're going, or if you're just pulled over on the side a little bit to let the runner get a little bit further ahead. But the idea is that the vehicle is relatively close or close proximity to the runner ahead. So I appreciate the point. And again,
Thanks.
That's been one of the common questions. Thanks, Jonathan.
I've got another question about the support vehicle at night. In the past, my crew have stopped to have a bit of a rest, and I've had the pacer out for a period of time with the crew vehicle, people in the crew vehicle having a rest. Is that still allowed if they're behind, or is that not allowed this year?
So what's your specific, can you just restate the specific piece of the question, Pam? Is it about having a pacer out, or is it about having a sleep? We can hear you.
No, about having the vehicle not behind, because in the past the vehicles have stopped, like at Dalgety Hall, they might have a feed and fiddle around, and a pacer will be with me usually, but they may be 45 minutes to an hour to catch me up.
We'd probably discourage the 45 minutes or an hour, but certainly if there's a little bit of time there, we want to make sure crews are also fed and taken care of there as well, Pam. So again, it gets back to, I suppose, be smart, be safe.
Okay, yep.
Any more questions or comments or feedback?
I just guess that in regards to deviating from the race route, but resume running from the point of departure. So if you're exiting to maybe go to an area that's a little bit safer to pull over, but it kind of means you go off and go forward slightly, so long as you're coming back to that area where you go off, then that's okay?
Correct, Don.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
And the intent is, I suppose, there's a difference between pulling off onto a side road and driving 1 or 2k up, and then realizing there's that takes you a shortcut up to another piece of road. There's a difference between that and just pulling off to the verge a little bit. That's fine. Yeah, 100 meters, 200 meters here or there over that distance is not that big a deal. It's the intent of actually someone leaving the route for a particular reason, and then coming and then rejoining the route at a totally different point, which is actually, it gets back to the age-old thing of cheating. And as we all know, we like to do the distance.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Sure.
So one more question.
Yes, Pam.
If you're passing another runner, do you, at night, people usually pass me, but do they go round, you have to go out onto the other side of the road, around the support car and then around the runner, and then your vehicle does the same thing? Is that the intent?
Yeah. And Pam, I think I've had you overtake me at night. So I know that's happened. And yeah, that's no different to any other time where the second support vehicle coming up would overtake. And again, it's back to the common sense judgment applies. So if two vehicles have come up really close to each other, you'd wait for the other runner to just spread a little bit. You don't have to race straight around and get right behind your runner. The common sense applies that there's two vehicles there. There's a couple of runners spread out a little bit. Pick the right time to go. No one's going to be penalised if they're not immediately right behind their runner in that sort of context. Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
Again, it just gets back to common sense and being smart about it.
Okay.
It's cool. Okay, might move on.
Any other questions or feedback before we move on?
Sorry, a question about paces. I had noticed from reading race reports that, say, going up Big Jack, people had support person walking with them up.
Yes.
Is that allowed, or are the paces only from the Friday night?
Jonathan, that's a nice segue into the next slide. So let's move there.
Yeah, that's fine, Jonathan. And I'll actually take the rap that I should have included that on the rules, and I missed that as an oversight. So paces at 8:30 p.m., which is about dusk. So it's around that time at dusk on the Friday evening, 15 hours after race commencement. Only one pacer to go with the runner. The difference is when you get to Charlotte Pass, if your support crew en masse wish to go up with you, that's allowable as long as they all have the mandatory equipment and are all in good shape, ready to go and to look after you. But for the other elements of the race, one pacer only. Pacers have to abide by the same rules, as in reflective vest, the red flashing light, etc. They can't provide any physical assistance to the runner, as in pull them along, hold them up, all those sorts of things. Obviously, if someone's struggling to keep their dinner down, they may want to look after them a bit more. But they can actually also act as a mule for their runner. So no issue with them carrying a drink for them, no issue carrying food for them. And yes, a pacer is permitted when ascending Big Jack. And again, it's company. They can also mule and carry some food for them. Also keep a little bit of lookout for oncoming traffic, those sorts of things. So pacers, yes, after 8:30 at dusk on the Friday evening.
Any questions around pacers? Does that answer your question, Jonathan?
Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, no, I wasn't in the race rules, and I was just checking that it was.
No.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. Cool.
Any other questions or feedback around that one? Moving on to support crew. So here's another difference that we're introducing this year, and we're going to be using, the actual mobile reception throughout the route has improved markedly over the years. And we're going to try and take advantage of that. So what we're actually going to do is use a WhatsApp group that we'll get everybody to register into beforehand, both runners and support crew alike. And what we want to do is we're still going to have the mandatory checkpoints, those 6 mandatory checkpoints. And what we want to do is the support crew actually notes in WhatsApp when their runner passes through that checkpoint. So put their full name, race number, checkpoint location, time of passing through. Just put that onto WhatsApp, and then everybody can actually pick it up. It goes without saying, we might get a few questions around this, but runners may only be supported by one support vehicle at a time. You can have 2. The second one must be off the actual route, and you can only be supported by one vehicle at any one time. High-vis reflective vests must be worn by the support crew anytime they step outside the vehicle. It's probably advisable that you keep it on at all times, in actual fact. Just moving to another page around support crew.
And actually, just if I may, just on the WhatsApp group, we'll ask you to use it just for the intended purpose only, almost like an official channel, rather than having 8,000 messages or jokes or other stuff. Really try just to limit it to those key points from that perspective.
Or abuse about Mickey Campbell and Greg Wallace.
Or other said things, or abuse about the paces or the food or anything else. Anyway, the support vehicle, please travel at maximum of 40k on the race route. I know you gave the example, Pam, where sometimes the vehicle needs to catch you up using an example where they perhaps stop for a little bit of food at Dalgety and they're slightly behind, but even if you're traveling at, 40k an hour and they're, I think 5k up the road, which is what, about at that time of night, probably about 30 to 35 minutes, maybe 40-minute run. It's only like a 6-7 minute car trip, so it's not that long at all. Unless there's a real big problem with your runner, there shouldn't need to be any speeding on the above 40 kilometres on the race route. And again, it's about safety for everybody concerned, not just your team, but every other team that's out there. Travel with hazard lights on at all times. You may remember in past years, we used to have the siren on the roof going at all times. We're not doing the siren. We don't need to do the siren on the roof, but we do need to have hazards going at all times. For those vehicles that sometimes have the stop-start ignition, just be smart and try to manage your car battery on the way through and make sure you're good. An important one, and this is as a result of, first of all, the bushfires late last year, followed by floods, and then floods again in about March. There's still a number of trees, particularly between Eden and the top of Big Jack, where the crews are still going through checking trees. And what they've asked us is, and it's been a condition, is that you don't stop or park under trees just because of the safety aspect. You're aware that a lot of the route follows the river from Toowoomba through to pretty much past Rocky Hall to Big Jack, and there's a lot of crossing points and there's a lot of trees. Please don't park under them. Also, please don't park in front of farm driveways, access gates, and do not park on the ascent of Big Jack or Beloka under any conditions. That's really, really important. We also ask you not to park as well in the farm gates, like at night. Make sure you're more in a lay-by or something along those lines if for any reason you take your runner off the road for a set time. Where we get complaints, sorry, what I should say is where there have been complaints in past years, it's always about farmers, particularly young families, having headlights inadvertently shining into their properties at set times of night, upsetting the children and the dogs and all those things. So please don't do that. We ask you not to meet up with your runner after the start line until Toowoomba, which is 24k in. For those of you who've done it before, it's a reasonably good bit of road. There is a little bit of dirt on that. There will be vehicles heading into Eden to work. So just make sure you're careful. And we encourage as support crews that they go to Toowoomba. The Toowoomba Public School puts on a great barbecue breakfast. That's their main fundraiser of the year. They've been extremely supportive of the event. They actually provide supporting letters to council to help with the approval process. And it's out of area money for them, which they're really desperate for. So please have a coffee, have a bacon egg roll and meet up there and wait for your runner. After that junction at Toowoomba, that's when you start traveling in the leapfrog manner with your runner. We suggest around 5k intervals. It does vary. Some people like longer distances. Some people like a little bit shorter depending on the time, but we sort of encourage that rather than 1 kilometre or 2 kilometres. Make sure all food handoffs, etc., occur on the right-hand side of the road. And that requires the support crew to look left, look right, then cross the road to your runner. No assistance from a moving vehicle. Don't pass things out cars. It's just, again, it's a safety aspect. And again, we mentioned earlier about paces and also being able to carry all the runners' mandatory gear on the Charlotte Pass to Kosciuszko leg so that the runner can just travel lightly. If there's any medical assistance required, your race pack will first of all have all the details of the medical centres and hospitals, be it Bega, Cooma, and all the appropriate medical centres, but understanding most of those will be closed obviously at night and the early hours of the morning. But you'll need to advise us via WhatsApp where there's an issue that warrants medical assistance, and particularly note the time and those elements as well. If there's a retirement, again, notify where retired, at what time, and then move to the next checkpoint. But please make sure there's communication in. Again, it's all about understanding what's going on and being safe.
Just to add to that, if it's an emergency like Greg, myself, and the medics, we've all got satellite phones. You'll be provided those contact details. So just bypass the WhatsApp and get straight onto that. If anything, needs emergency treatment.
Mm-hmm.
So any questions or comments or feedback around support crew?
Just a question about if you've got two vehicles. So just to confirm, the second vehicle that's not assisting the runner, they can drive on the race route, but they drive to a checkpoint and wait there basically to swap over. Is that how it works, or do they have to go another way around or something?
No, they don't have to go some other way around. So fine to have the second vehicle. The preference absolutely is the changeover at the checkpoint. No issue with the other vehicle driving on the route, I suppose, to have a look, for want of a better term. But again, not speeding, none of those elements, taking a lot of care, drive past their runner, that's okay. But we don't want, again, we very strongly discourage it having 2 or 3 crew vehicles together. Even though you may clearly state that the second vehicle is not providing assistance at that time, in theory it gets down to opinions, and we'd rather not have any of that. And again, just do the right thing. So no issue with the second vehicle. Absolute preference is change over to checkpoint and go from there.
Okay, thanks.
There's a question from Jeff, and he's basically saying that the second support vehicle, when it's not supporting the runner, is it required to go at 40 k's an hour, or can it actually travel at the speed limit? I mean, it's an unofficial support car in that capacity, and you're allowed to go at the actual speed limit, but we'd rather you just, keep everything the same and you go at 40 kilometres an hour as well. So that's a preference.
I suppose the key element it gets to is we're all in this together. The runners, the support crew, us as organisers, we all want a good event together, and that requires us to think and act of everybody at the one time. So think of others, think of everybody in the race. So again, you're not an official event vehicle if you're not the designated support crew, but please, there's runners going to be out on the road, there's going to be vehicles. Just take it easy and please do the right thing, be smart, and be safe.
There's another question from Jeff, and he's asking, when entering the national park after Jindabyne, does a park entry fee need to be paid, or does the crew stay with the runner past the park entry? Jeff, the actual crew stays with the runner to the finish, and you do need to pay the park entry fee. Again, I mean, to Greg's point about Toowoomba School, they're in desperate need of a lot of out-of-town revenue, and, please don't skimp on that and actually just pay your national park fees, pay the dues. Any other questions or comments or feedback?
Sorry, just about the national park fees. Is it possible to pay that at night? I have no idea how it's done. No, okay.
It's not, Jonathan. So the park is closed after 7, or they kind of let the checkpoint that they go through. It's about 5 kilometres up from the Threadbow River. It's closed after 7 p.m.
My memory doesn't open till about 8, I think. I'll confirm times.
I think it's 7 o'clock as well in the morning. So, I mean, you can get away with it, but I just advocate that you actually go back and, pay your dues.
Cool. Okay.
Just a word on race officials. So there's 7 points of the actual route where we have to cross the road. These are detailed there. All those actual race crossings will have marshals, and they'll be signified by orange cones. Runners can only cross under the advice of the marshals. So you need to listen to the marshal and you need to act upon their advice. You can't just run across. You need to actually touch base with these marshals and make sure that they're okay to give you the go ahead to cross. Just another note on the WhatsApp group and the emergency communications. Another couple of points. We may terminate the race at Charlotte Pass. People will be familiar with the inclement weather option. So if we deem that there's not going to be a safe ascent of Mount Kosciuszko achievable, then we'll actually terminate the race at Charlotte Pass. And I think that's happened on 2 occasions in the past.
Don't look at me. My memory's not that good.
I think it has. And just what I kind of said about earlier, lack of compliance with race rules. You might get a time penalty, you might get disqualification, you might never be invited back They're at our discretion, the race officials and the race organisers. You might get multiple time penalties. There's no appeals that can be made, and there's no appeals process.
I just probably add a touch just on those crossing points. A couple of those that, while they're all important because you're crossing the road, just past the start line where you cross the Princess Highway, again, potentially logging trucks, semi-trailers, it's highway traffic doing 100 k's an hour. While there's a bit of a good stretch of road where they can see, they're still doing 100 k an hour. And that's why, so the Marshal's advice stands true. Similarly, on the Monaro Highway at Bibbin Loop, just north of Bombala River Bridge, after you actually run across the bridge, again, cars are traveling 100 k high speed. You have to follow the instructions of the Marshal. It's so important. If you have to wait, get a breather. If someone catches you a bit, you're a bit more, you've got a bit of breath in your belt to run away from them again. But again, it's just really important that, particularly at some of those, the vehicles are traveling at high speed. Again, be smart and be safe.
Just a point on the paying the national park fees. Adrian, thanks, mate. He basically says if you were in the past, if you were unable to actually like buy a ticket, you can get one from the parks office in Jindabyne. It's just across the road from the Lake Jindabyne Motel Hotel. It's just up past the shops there. And Wendy has actually says, oh no, she's asked, can national park fees be paid online? I don't think they can, Wendy. But you can actually get a yearly pass, you know, if you're in kind of any kind of national park areas. You can buy a national park pass that actually covers off every actual national park. I think from memory they're about $66, so they're great value for money.
Cool. Okay, I suppose bring it back to what are the core differences, and this is just a highlight for those of you who are quite familiar with the rules. Daylight, runners run on the right hand side of the road, but at night time they run on the left hand side. We have the WhatsApp group, which will be used, and again, any requests, notifications, etc., and the mandatory check-ins there. If there's very patchy coverage at the time of a checkpoint, as soon as possible, straight after that, and we encourage that. We don't want people gaming things by not reporting in. It's just, again, it's do the right thing. We want the spirit of the event. Avoid running in groups due to our good friend COVID, first and foremost. The rear flashing light at all times. There's only one aid station this year, and that's where the Brandy Creek Trail joins Toowoomba Road. It's 3-4k in. There's normally a checkpoint there. What that enables us to do is to make sure that everybody's out of the fire trail, and we can then close that section off and say it's done and move forward. So there'll just be a small aid station there. There's normally one or two other aid stations between there and Toowoomba. They won't be in place. So if you want to think about carrying a flask or something else, that's up to you. But it's effectively after the 3.7k, you're self-supported until you get to Toowoomba at the 24k mark. There used to be an aid station at Rocky Hall. There won't be. That will still be a standard checkpoint. And normally at 50k, and if you got sort of the 6-7 hours under your belt by that stage, trying to think of the timings, normally you're really wanting your own food anyway at that time. And there's no toilet at Boydtown Beach. Two things that's are still in flight is live tracking. We're anticipating having live tracking utilised this year, and we're trialling the equipment shortly, and the device, which will carry on you. It's fairly lightweight. That's probably about 30 grams or so, maybe a touch more than that.
So that's the 3G one, and there's also a satellite option as well, and it's just a little bit heavier and just a little bit wider.
Yep. And again, that does two things. The first piece is from a safety, that if there's any issues, we know where everybody is any runner is at any time, first and foremost. The second thing is, as we again look to build coverage around the race, we'll help to try and use and promote that aspect as well, not just for your family and friends, but actually people from afar and even overseas wanting to follow the race. I know Grant Moore, as an example, over in the US, will be desperate to see how everybody's going. The other piece is there's still COVID-19 considerations that will be accounted for, and we're still just working through that with the authorities, and that'll depend on the latest health advice at the time. So even as you're aware, just the other day, they lifted some of the restrictions a little bit further from a New South Wales perspective. And the reason that the COVID piece is important, besides the safety aspect, is, and we haven't clarified everything there yet, is the welcome dinner may be inside, the welcome dinner may be outside at a venue where we're all spread out quite apart, or it may be a staggered welcome dinner point from that perspective. We don't anticipate needing to have sanitizer every 5 minutes, but obviously runners will be expected to have that. And at places like Dalgety, yes, there'll be sanitizer there. At Charlotte Pass, there'll be hand sanitizer there. We just encourage everybody to be very conscious, because it's almost like the vehicles. It's not just your runner and you as a support crew, it's everybody else in the race. Everybody else wants everybody to be safe. So as that COVID element gets finalised for the expected considerations for the start of December, we'll communicate that out. We don't anticipate that to be onerous or very significant, but it may mean that probably the two biggest implications, besides sanitizer at Dalgety and those places, will be the welcome dinner may be staged outside, either in the Eden Fisherman's Club car park or at a park nearby, although it'll be a bit windy, and it may have staggered times depending on the number of people. So we've got to work through that. The second piece may mean also the presentation is held outside the hotel in that grass area between the hotel and the lake. That's the sort of COVID considerations we're working through, as opposed to anything else. Again, the 4.5 square metres, there's a lot of room to spread out over 240 Ks. So
there's a good mate of mine, he runs Centurion Running over in the UK, and just to give you an idea of the lengths that they've went to, like they actually temperature check every runner and volunteer in their races. What they've had to do as well, because of the worsening situation over in the UK, is they're actually asking, for the actual races to go ahead, everybody gets a COVID test and submits their results prior to the race start. We don't anticipate it going to that kind of length. Hopefully the situation continues to improve in New South Wales, and hopefully the borders start to open up a little bit wider.
So we'll work through that, and again, we'll update that as it gets closer with what the final considerations will be. And as usual, it will be, if you have symptoms, get tested. If you have symptoms just prior to the event, please don't come. We want to be on the news for the right reasons, not for all the wrong reasons that we created a cluster or an outbreak and spread it all across southern New South Wales. I don't think anybody wants that. So again, it just gets back to doing the right thing, and everybody generally in the ultra running community does the right thing, and we just encourage you to keep doing that.
And look, it's taken a lot of hard work to get this race back on the map. We don't want to kind of compromise that. There's going to be like the eyes of not only Australia, but even sometimes the world on us, because there's not too many events happening like this, of this nature. So we're going to be under kind of close scrutiny. We want to make sure that we actually deliver the safest event possible, but also, make it one of the best as well. So any more final questions, comments, feedback?
A quick question about water. Are there places on the route that the support crews can fill up water containers, or do we need to take everything in?
What we encourage, Nick, is you take everything in. Look, there will be a couple of places like at Toowoomba, for example, the public school, Cathcart, Jindabyne. But again, in those cases, you're relying on being at shops when they're open or public parks. And what we've not done is check the parks to understand whether taps have those tap keys or not. As you know, as a runner, there's nothing worse than getting to a park, seeing a tap, and then going, shit, it's got a key and I can't get a drink.
Yeah.
And those sorts of elements. And obviously we don't want people jumping fences into people's front yards. So we encourage you to take it with you. I know in the past, I've just taken a couple of those sort of 10 litre water large water containers you get at Coles or Woolworths, and they've been sufficient, and like a or even a shrink wrap pack of those 12 water bowls or 24 water bowls, and that's sufficient. And again, as long as you do the right thing with waste, no litter anywhere, and we encourage you to recycle, but really you need to be self-sufficient with that. And that also gets back to your crews as well, making sure that they have enough food and the right food for themselves as well.
Perfect. Cheers, guys. Thanks,
Nick.
Simone and Craig have kind of mentioned that single day park passes back to the national parks. Simone reckons it's $22. Craig reckons it's $17. There's certainly no online payment available. And maybe I was undercooking the actual annual pass, because Simone reckons it's $190 now, but I reckon that's still really good value for money.
Okay. What we'll do is look into that though and put a clarifying point up over the next week or so.
Just a question about COVID restrictions. I mean, this might be the state differences because masks are compulsory in Victoria. I mean, so you're not contemplating masks being needed at any stage. I mean, obviously one of the risks is the interaction between crews, right? Not just runners.
Yeah, not at this stage.
No, I mean, if we actually have the pre-race briefing inside, there might be the possibility of actually people donning masks, Jonathan, but no, not when people are outside, and not in the numbers that we're talking about. We don't see it as necessary.
Sure. Okay. Good to know.
And we'll provide adequate advice, adequate time. We won't so you have to have a mask 5 minutes beforehand. We'll provide adequate time towards that, but that's not anticipated. Again, like all things, as you go on a longer event, as you appreciate, hygiene can be challenging, but we encourage you all to do the right thing as far as personal hygiene and your crew hygiene goes, for your own well-being, your own stomach, and also for that of everyone else in the race.
Don's asked a question: can the runner have anyone attend the finish line who's not in the crew, i.e. their parents, husbands, wife, children, etc.? Definitely, Don. Just be conscious of the parking at Charlotte Pass. During the day it can get a little bit busy, but definitely encourage that.
So if you're finishing at 10 o'clock at night, it's a fair chance that they'll get pride of place parking and a front row seat. If it is really good weather up there, mid-afternoon, the vehicles, as you know, there'll be quite a long parking queue, and the vehicles will be parked down past the Charlotte Pass entrance itself into the resort. So absolutely, and we encourage that. And we encourage that again within a COVID safe environment as well.
Any more feedback, comments, questions?
One quick question about the flashing red light. Just wanted to double check, is something that's integrated into the headlamp okay? Because I'm thinking specifically of the Petzl now has a flashing red light that's at the back on the runner's head. Is that acceptable for the flashing red light?
That's acceptable, Anne.
Thank you.
The piece I'd maybe suggest, Anne, is that means you have to have your headlight, you have to wear your headlight 24 hours a day. Whether you want to wear that during daylight hours or not is up to you.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point.
But as long as you got a rear light, and yes, if it's a bike light attached, if it's on the back of your headlight, that's fine. But it just has to be all the time.
All right, thank you.
Anything else, guys? Don, rule 2.6.3 is the right side rear window of the vehicle, the driver's side. I'm assuming so. Yes, indeed it is, Don.
Yeah.
You just tell from your accent it's like mine, not from Australia originally. Any further questions or comments? In that case, we might bid you adieu. And, any further questions or feedback, then, please get in touch with us, Facebook page or Facebook Messenger. This session's been recorded as well, so we'll chuck it up there on Facebook for everybody to see. So please keep the feedback coming. At the end of the day, we want to run a brilliant, safe event for everybody and make sure that this event gets on the news for all the right reasons.
And just furthermore, we are looking to have a couple more webinars over the next few weeks as well on a couple of little bit of different topics as of general interest. And again, there'll be a chance for a bit of Q&A there. So we want you to come prepared, ready, and that enables you to be really ready to go. And also then takes also a bit of pressure off the race briefing, where we can focus on just the key things or what's different, rather than needing to go through from go to woe, because normally you want to get see everybody but get a good night's sleep as well.
Cool. Thanks, everyone. Chat soon.
Thanks.